people on planet Earth in just 7 years are going to own absolutely nothing. I thought about this and I thought that's a little extreme. I wonder what they mean. And so I wanted to look not what people said about this, but going to the actual sources of the World Economic Forum. I wanted to know, what did they mean by this idea that you will own nothing and be happy? Let's go to an article in Forbes that were specifically told in the article, you can see right there, that it was contributed by the World Economic Forum. And it says, welcome to 2030, I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better.
I mean, your cell phone? Why do you want to own a cell phone if you can just lease it? And if you lease, why shouldn't you lease your refrigerator or your washing machine or your dishwasher? Or why do you want to own it? I mean, it's not like the plastic in the middle. It's like, I own it.
Ida Aachen writes that in 2030 in our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we don't need it. My living room is being used for business meetings when I'm not there, and once in a while, I will choose to cook for myself. It's easy. Even the necessary kitchen equipment isn't owned. It's delivered to the door by drones within minutes.
The scary part of that is that if everything is leased by these big tech companies, what happens if they don't like us? What happens if we step out of line and they decide to cancel us on a individual level, like they did with the Russians, where they just said, no more Netflix? If they cut off the supply of what you're leasing, what it does is it gives them complete control and complete power.
Founder and director Klaus Schwab's three mentors were the most influential people in America's thermonuclear deterrence program, as well as leading proponents of a one-world government. Henry Kissinger recruited Klaus Schwab at the Harvard International Seminar, which was funded by the CIA. During this time, Kissinger was focused on global governance and depopulation.
There is a policy of the American government. It's called the Kissinger Report, which was produced in the mid-70s. And it explicitly states that the purpose of the foreign policy in Africa was to reduce the population, because they have great mineral resources there. At the time, Kissinger and those involved with the Carter administration wanted to shrink the population, make sure that the Africans do not develop and do not use the resources for themselves, because we in the States, we need them.
But it was with the Council on Foreign Relations that Kissinger became a major player by wargaming psychological operations involving America's growing thermonuclear weapons arsenal and writing the book on nuclear weapons and foreign policy. John K. Galbraith was a highly influential economist who helped Klaus Schwab create the World Economic Forum. Galbraith was an economist at Harvard who traveled to Germany in 1938 to study land policies under Hitler's National Socialist government. By 1968, Galbraith had joined Kissinger in his pursuit of a one-world government. And it was during this time that Kissinger introduced Galbraith to Klaus Schwab, along with Herman Kahn, who in 1967 suggested subverting democracy by training a select group of global leaders, which later became the World Economic Forum's Young Global Leaders. Both Kissinger and Galbraith were heavily involved in the religion of thermonuclear deterrent warfare. But Herman Kahn was, as the New Yorker puts it, the heavyweight of the megadeth intellectuals. By the late 60s, Kahn was pushing for a European Union and joined Galbraith in 1970 on a European speaking tour to support Klaus Schwab's recruitment drive for the first European Management Symposium, now known as the World Economic Forum. And while they were doing that, Klaus Schwab helped merge his father's nuclear weapons company into a company that he then directed to illegally build nuclear weapons for the South African government.
And in this Unlimited Hangout investigation, the past that Klaus Schwab has worked to hide is explored in detail, revealing the involvement of the Schwab family not only in the Nazi quest for an atomic bomb, but apartheid South Africa's illegal nuclear program. Especially revealing is the history of Klaus's father, Eugen Schwab, who led the Nazi-supported German branch of a Swiss engineering firm into the war as a prominent military contractor. That company, Escher Wyss, I don't know, would use slave labor to produce machinery critical to the Nazi war effort, as well as the Nazis' effort to produce heavy water for its nuclear program. Years later, at the same company, a young Klaus Schwab served on the board of directors when the decision was made to furnish the racist apartheid regime of South Africa with the necessary equipment to further its quest to become a nuclear power. And that's pretty much the synopsis of what this goes into. There's a lot of information here with a lot of deep dives into very specific documents and things. Obviously, a lot of research has gone into this, so I would suggest you read through it.
In 1972, the Club of Rome published The Limits to Growth, which planted the seeds of the depopulation agenda. And while Kahn, Kissinger, and Galbraith helped Schwab get started, what really brought him the international support he was hoping for was when he introduced the ideas of depopulation. In 1972, the Club of Rome's founder was invited by Schwab to make the keynote speech in 1973. As controversial as it was, even Herman Kahn opposed it, the World Economic Forum suddenly caught the attention and financial support of powerful elitists everywhere and blew up to what it has become today.
And so it was founded by this guy, Klaus Schwab. His father has deep ties into Germany. There's deep ties there. He studied under Henry Kissinger, and he's created this think tank, bringing these people together to try to figure out a better way, a more equitable way to run the world. Watch out, anytime you see that word equitable, you know what they're talking about. They're talking about Marxism. And so what he's done is he's just taken the same ideas. You said we haven't seen this before, but of course we have. It's the same ideas being rehashed. And so it's globally. And so it's just Marxism all over. So they get the world leaders together, the politicians, the public, and the private, and they come together in what he's calling stakeholder capitalism. Stakeholder capitalism. So instead of, we talked about last night at dinner how Rothbard said that businesses should focus on profit. He says, no, business shouldn't focus on profit. Business should focus on the community, ESG, environmental, social, governance. We should be equitable. And so basically distorted all these things, but they want to do it through power, through control, forcing people to comply instead of educating people and showing people better ways. And so they've done it through the public-private partnership. So basically through the money. So now if you don't fall in line with what their policies are, no money for you, no investment for you, right? And if these big companies don't follow along with their policies and push these things down, they don't get the funding, and then they basically get pushed out of the. So I think I reference quite often what Henry Kissinger said, which was maybe a warning to the world, but I think it was more of a call to arms on their side. So he said, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control a continent. If you control the money, you control the world.
Bill Gates, business magnate, software developer, philanthropist, nation's largest farmland owner. Yeah, you heard that right. Gates owns nearly 270,000 acres of farmland in the U.S. Who knew?
Local farmers I spoke to in South Georgia and North Florida said that he's doing the same thing that Big Ag did before he got there, which is using a lot of fertilizer that leaches into the rivers, causes big algae blooms, and actually is very ruinous for the habitats of manatees and fish.
Part of the World Economic Forum is the Young Global Leaders Program, which identifies, selects, and promotes future leaders. Many of the young leaders who pass through this program have risen to public prominence in high positions and/or become presidents, prime ministers, CEOs, and the heads of influential international organizations.
But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina, and so on, that we the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are actually young global leaders of the World Economic Forum.